Game over, man. Game over. Johnny.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Why so serious?
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Oh, welcome to this podcast review for December 8th, 2025, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody, for what should be a masterful conversation.
Which one of
Keep that
us
in mind.
is the mastermind?
Well, that's an interesting question because if we're going off the film that we're going to talk about here, that may not necessarily be a term of endearment.
Well, it's certainly not one of us. I mean, if anything,
Yeah.
the mastermind is, of course, Kelly Reichardt.
Yeah, she is always the mastermind. I guess we could start the conversation there for any new listeners out there. How we feel about one Kelly Reichardt. Brendan, what say you?
Oh, she's our girl.
Yeah.
I'm actually, as we're talking here, I'm trying to pull up my ranking of her films, which I think I do have published on Letterboxd. But I love her usual gimmicks of depicting small people, especially in some form of economic struggle, whether it be deliberate or through means or reasons outside their control. I think that very much is something she is used to doing. And all of her movies have a great sense of place. She actually is really good at depicting what feels like middle America without feeling like the normal side of middle America, if that makes sense. In a way, she kind of reminds me of a softer version of Sean Baker, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But I think her movies are lovely. I think out of all of her now 9 films, including The Mastermind, and I guess this is maybe a bit revealing right now, I don't think she's directed a bad movie. There's some I like more than others, but I think she might be 9 for 9 as far as her features are concerned. And I guess, spoiler alert, Mastermind's good. I guess we'll just start there.
Yeah, no, Kelly Reichardt is simply one of my favorites working today. I deeply, deeply love her as a filmmaker. And part of it is what you're talking about in terms of how she loves to depict the American underbelly. Mm-hmm. Certainly, like Sean Baker, of course, her films are very different stylistically. Mm-hmm. Maybe closer to Jeff Nichols in that regard, who also does the same thing. And they both have similar grounded, raw approaches.
I was going to say, I don't want to make too many comparisons because I do think Kelly Reichardt is certainly her own voice. But at the same time, I think if there are maybe some tonal comparisons to make between her work and maybe someone else, I think Jeff Nichols is a very fair one. Maybe someone like David Lowery is maybe another fair one we can kind of throw in there as well, even if the sense of place is very different.
That's a good call. Yeah. Old Joy was in my top 20 for its year. Wendy and Lucy was my number 1 movie of 2008.
Yeah.
Meek's Cutoff was in my top 10, maybe top 5. I'm trying to recall, but it was in my top 10 for its year. Night Moves wasn't in my top 20, but do like it. Certain Women, top 10 of its year. First Cow was my favorite film of 2020. And then Showing Up, really, really fascinating little quirky movie that I am.
It's an outlier.
Liking more and more.
I wasn't blown away by that one, but I love that it exists, especially knowing that Kelly Reichardt herself as an art professor simultaneously. So it kind of makes her a very strange companion with this movie in some ways. I do have to ask, because I feel like this is another one of those filmmakers where we have the same brain once again. I can only imagine your top 3 Kelly Reichardt films are my top 3 Kelly Reichardt films. Maybe not in the same order, but I feel like we have the same 3. Because First Cow, Wendy and Lucy, and Meek's Cutoff, I think, are her 3 best movies. Maybe to different degrees, and maybe the order is a little bit different, but those are special movies. I really do think those are special modern classics in a way.
My only hesitation, because yes, those 3, but Certain Women is so good and so high for me as well. I will say those 4 I feel like are in a category of their own, and then slightly below that I would have Night Moves, and Showing Up. Still really like those movies, but I'd say those, and Old Joy I would group there as well. Like those three, just kind of that slightly lower tier. So I would maybe group them more in that way versus, hey, why don't you just rank these 1 through 9, which is going to be so much more difficult to do.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like ranking children. I want you to take your 9 children and rank them.
You know,
that's
I'm glad you mentioned Certain Women, because that is maybe the one film that could give one of those other 3 in my top 3 a run for its money. But I think a lot of it mostly comes down to the fact that Certain Women might have my favorite performance from a Kelly Reichardt film, and that being Lily Gladstone.
Yeah, that's certainly up to see. Now that's another conversation that's tricky for me to have. Like I don't even like. She always gets really, really great performances, and there is an elephant in the room. We haven't talked about the Mastermind, but I don't think, given this conversation already, I don't think it's going to be hard for people to put the pieces together that it's only going to add to what we're already talking about
We've
here.
basically already reviewed the Mastermind already, just by giving this early conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
the beans.
with the film itself, with its central performance, it adds more complexity to the questions that you're raising there. So, like, as far as performances go, man, she gets some great performances. Again, it's hard for me to pick and choose. But I can't say, and that's why it's a little easier for me to group those 4 together, and maybe a 5th. You know, we'll see. Like those as like a top tier, and then I can have a solid second tier with Old Joy and Night Moves and Showing Up, movies that again I still really, really enjoy a lot. It's just easier for me to separate them that way. That's kind of where I'm at. But
some filmmakers are just kind of beyond ranking, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just-
ranking is fun for us to do because we always have to do it at the end of every year, right? So we often do it with filmmakers and other forms of artistic expression when it comes to movies. But there's some filmmakers that their work is in such close proximity with each other that you only have the ability to do it by tiers, like you said. And Kelly Reichardt is certainly one of them.
Because gun to my head, you are probably right. Again, talking off the cuff here. I don't have my Letterboxd ranking pulled up, but it is probably some version of First Cow, Meek's Cutoff, Wendy and Lucy, and then maybe Certain Women at number 4. But the reason I wanted to bring up the grouping element is because I don't want to make it sound like Certain Women is at 4, but somewhat distant from those 3, because I really don't feel that way at all. Like I feel like those 4, again, maybe a 5th, they kind of, in terms of quality and how much I love them, like the disparity is not all that much.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I think that's a very fair grouping of 4, because those 4 are, they have some similarities, aesthetically speaking. They almost feel like they kind of function as companions in a way. And maybe it's because most of them feature Michelle Williams. And maybe that's also part of it.
Love that relationship. That Kelly
absolutely.
Reichardt, Michelle Williams relationship is special. Do really like it a lot. All right, so that's Kelly Reichardt. We are huge fans of Reichardt. So now we are here with her latest. It is titled The Mastermind. This is a film that premiered at the Cannes Film Festival all the way back in May. It competed for the Palme d'Or even. And then was released by Mubi on October 17th. But I don't know, is it streaming on Mubi? Is that where people are able to see this? Because I don't think it's in theaters. I don't even remember us getting it in theaters here in Miami. If we did, it wasn't for very long.
I did for what I think was maybe just a weekend.
Yeah, I think we had it for like a week.
Yeah.
And I think it was during one of those weeks where I was preparing to fly to Michigan with my son. So there was no way I was going to make it to the theater.
Commitments.
Yeah.
You were being a mastermind of a father in those moments.
Yeah, exactly. So I was not able to see this in theaters, unfortunately. But if it's streaming on Mubi, then it might be available for those that are on Mubi there. either way, let's dive into this. The Mastermind is written and directed by the one, the only, the great Kelly Reichardt. It stars Josh O'Connor, Alina Haim, Sterling Thompson, Jasper Thompson, Hope Davis, Bill Camp, John Magaro, Gabby Hoffman, and others that come and go throughout the film. If you're not familiar with The Mastermind, in 1970, failed architect James Blaine Mooney and cohorts wander into a museum in broad daylight and steal 4 paintings. When holding on to the art proves more difficult than stealing them, Mooney is relegated to a life on the run. Okay. A lot to talk about with that synopsis.
I love how
that
fun
this
you
is
made
directed
this
by
movie
Reichardt. But Brendan, what did you think about The Mastermind?
I think it's really funny that apparently when Kelly Reichardt was filming the heist scene for this movie, the art department at her university that she teaches at was also being robbed on the same day. I don't know.
Wow.
I
That's
think I saw
crazy.
that on the trivia here, but in a weird way, I bring that piece of trivia up because I think it's kind of telling just how fun this movie weirdly is. It's fun by Kelly Reichardt standards.
And can I also just state that while this was filmed obviously a year ago or a few years ago,
Yeah.
this coming out around the same time that the Louvre was robbed over in France, also kind of ironic and hilarious.
I think that is amazing. It almost makes me think Kelly Reichardt may have staged something to add a meta component to this movie.
Just say
Because
like-
but seriously, just given the the sheer simplicity of how the Louvre was robbed earlier this year, and
yeah,
the simplicity of how these paintings were robbed by just pure luck in a way.
not much has changed in 50 years.
50 years. If that's the point this movie's trying to make, then it might be the most ahead of its time movie of the year.
Yeah,
So it has to.
for sure.
It certainly earned some points in that way. But this movie's a lot of fun, and it's fun by Kelly Reichardt standards. It's not the typical dose of fun you'll get for a movie like this. This is not Ocean's 11 level of fun.
No.
No. But it's certainly maybe what Kelly Reichardt's version of an Ocean's 11 like movie could be, because she's more interested in the desperation and the aftermath of said heist. And that's very much in keeping with what Kelly Reichardt's good at. One of her biggest traits, as we already talked about, was depicting desperate characters in major economic turmoil. And that makes this movie also very much comparable to something like First Cow or Wendy and Lucy, just in its own way. I just think it's kind of fun how this time Kelly Reichardt injects that conflict with a little more silliness in a way. Maybe that's not the right word, but there's a breeziness to this movie until there isn't, which we'll talk about later. But I found that tonal choice really fun and surprisingly very, very satisfying. In a way, this almost feels like, if something like First Cow was maybe her ode to Robert Altman's McKay and Mrs. Miller, this is maybe her ode to The Long Goodbye. And I also have to give credit to our good friend Sophia Simonella over at Awards Watch, because on her Letterboxd review for this, she actually made the comparison to how Josh O'Connor kind of resembles Elliot Gould in this movie. And I do think she's very on point, and it does maybe prove that there is a little bit of Altman going on here in some of Kelly Reichardt's films, and this is certainly no exception. I think this is a really good movie. Maybe not my favorite Reichardt film, but I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I loved it. I deeply, deeply love this movie. In fact, it might be one of my favorite films of the year, to be perfectly honest with you.
Certainly top 20 at the very least for me right now.
I think what's really great about it is that, to your point, it is the anti-Ocean's 11.
Mm-hmm.
It is an anti-heist movie, and it's the exact kind of anti-heist film you would expect from one Kelly Reichardt, in the sense that it is methodical, it's unconventional. You could almost accuse the film of being scant, which I think is the point. You talked about how breezy and pointed the film is, and I very much do agree with you, because this is a movie straight out of the new Hollywood era. It's almost as if it time traveled from the 70s and into 2025. Its time period aesthetics are immaculate. The production design and costuming are really great. And the cinematography is smothered in grainy brown and gray hues that complement those period details just incredibly well. But maybe even more vitally, this film, and you stole the words right out of my mouth. It's like you read my notes. I did not read that review from Sophia, but I'm glad to hear that we are on the same page, because when watching this, the only thing that came to mind was The Long Goodbye or even California Split. Robert Altman would have loved this movie. Would have loved it.
Or would he have,
also fits here very
or
well.
would he have hated it because it seems too similar to his own style? Because
Perhaps.
Altman, which honestly just proves that the movie is very good, I guess.
It is. It is very good, because James, the Josh O'Connor character, he is one of the worst characters of the year. And I say that very complimentary. He is detestable. He's utterly clueless and could not be more detached from the politics of the era, which makes the title of the film so hilariously ironic. He's simply one of those classic I can never do anything right characters that you just can't take your eyes off of. Reminded me a lot of Llewyn Davis in that regard, except he doesn't come with the empathy like Llewyn. James is just the worst. But it's really fun to see how Reichardt devolves James as his world crumbles around him. He's really the shallowest of art themes, and I think that's why the film's almost slight narrative works here. James isn't that complicated, and Reichardt isn't interested in some sort of psychoanalysis of why he squandered his comfortable middle-class life. It's as simple as James having the luxury to disregard the political climate and rebel without any second thought. Now, I do think there is more going on here, as we'll talk about, but really at the heart of this film, it's about that cogent irony of James's ignorance to the reality around him. And the results here are pretty funny, often very entertaining, albeit in a Reichardt methodical kind of way. But yes, I was with this film thoroughly.
And I think you make a really great point there. And I mentioned in my opening thoughts that this is still in keeping with many of Kelly Reichardt's films like First Cow and Wendy and Lucy that depict desperate characters going through some form of economic turmoil. Yet a movie like The Mastermind, it's very particular as to what that quote-unquote economic turmoil is, because unlike many of Reichardt's other protagonists in her other films, James seems to live a life that appears to be rather comfortable. I mean, he has a home, he has a family.
Yeah.
If anything, he might be pressured by his parents to do better, but that's a very relatable notion. If anything, he just doesn't have thick enough skin to push back on that notion.
Yeah.
So he goes about it in the wrong ways. If anything, his desperation feels more to do with his desire to find a way, financially specifically, to disconnect from the realities around him, the political realities around him. If anything, this movie is about the delusion of the American dream more so than anything else. And I think that's interesting because in a way it makes the movie very much in keeping with Kelly Reichardt's typical themes, but it's also kind of a deconstruction of them at the same time. Like in a way, this movie is kind of addressing those other movies simultaneously while also participating in some similar ideas. And I love movies that can find that middle ground by participating in something that it's also commenting on. And somehow I think this movie does fit that bill. I do think it's able to straddle that line perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you think of something like First Cow and how those characters are navigating the American dream on the frontier. And of course, it was a very different time. But what we see here with James is that he does have a comfortable middle-class life. And the American dream might be out there, might be something he's trying to attain for, but it's not as if he is desperate in the same ways as we've seen with other characters in Reichardt's films.
Yeah.
but as we've been talking about, there is a simplicity to this film in some ways. While most of what we see is centered on that irony of James being detached from the era's political climate and how that forms this luxury of being an art thief. I do think there are a few nuances bubbling underneath the surface here.
Oh, sure.
Maybe most notably is the cost of his selfishness. And it's not just his own personal freedom, but really it's more so the women in his life that have to carry the burden, right? It's his wife, Terry, who is now forced into single parenthood as he is on the run. His mom essentially funded the heist without knowing it, as he manipulated her into giving him money to pull off said heist. And while those two do most of the heavy lifting, I also think of Maud, the wife of the Fred character, who understands what's at stake when James shows up on their front door. If it was up to Fred, James would have stayed there forever. But Maud wasn't going to put up with it, and James's presence added stress to their circumstances. And I do love how the film emphasizes how these women are affected by James's ignorance. And you can say the same thing for Carl and Tommy, James's sons, who just want their dad to come home. And there are a few scenes here that are subtly quite heartbreaking in that regard. And when you couple those personal ramifications with the political climate of the time, I think the film is suggesting the importance of being tethered to what's going around you socially, politically, economically. In a weird way, this film is almost an answer to something like Eddington, which I didn't like as much as you, but it is arguing that you can't just live in a state of privilege and luxury and expect to be a mastermind of anything.
You can't fully disconnect from these things.
And yet so many people do, which is what leads to the discourse we have today and the out of touch actions that many people take. Maybe a little bit of an unfair comparison as they're totally different movies, but both are trying to highlight that gap, the idea that people become completely severed from reality and make choices that are wholly detached from the real world. And I do love how Reichardt does that here. Again, in this ironic but brilliant way with a character that you just utterly despise the whole time.
Yeah, it's as if James thinks that his way to quote unquote freedom, this is his monetary way of getting to this point where he no longer has to worry about what's going on in the outside world. And if anything, he's trying to fund his own worldly ignorance, if that makes any sense. And I think that's interesting. I think it's also really interesting that this is a movie that follows a movie like Showing Up, Kelly Reichardt's last film, which is all about an artist's perspective and the art itself, and is very much aware of that. And as we alluded to earlier, Kelly Reichardt's also a professor of art. So this is something that she has a tie to. So it's fun that she makes a movie that is, the movie's not anti-art, but it certainly depicts a main character who is anti-art because he sees it as a monetary gain and not as an artistic gain. The relationship that he has with Fred and Maud, played by John Magaro and Gabby Hoffman, respectively, it seems to suggest that they all come from a similar background where they had maybe art classes together. And clearly James learned the wrong lesson from their teachings, as if that's what I feel like Kelly Reichardt is suggesting here. And he's more so using it as a means for economic freedom than anything else, which is what makes the ending of this movie, which I'm sure we'll talk about, one of the funniest endings of the year. As tragic as it also is, but it's also one of the more humorous touches, just given the sheer irony of it all. As far as like moments of irony are concerned, certainly one of the best moments of that I think we've seen this year.
So I guess to not necessarily push back, but maybe offer a question to what you're talking about. The paintings that James steals, they are 4 Arthur Dove paintings.
Right.
And he does talk about them quite a bit at the beginning of the film and is seemingly an Arthur Dove fan. was that not the main motivation? Am I misremembering? Was that not the main motivation? Or is he choosing that artist because of Fred's connection to it? I'm trying to recall here.
So I think it's a good question. I think he being James, says that he takes them because of his reverence for that particular painter. But I think if anything, it's more so an excuse for whatever monetary gain he can get from them. That's at least, I don't know if that was the intent, but that was the interpretation I took from it. Whereas whatever James said about the art that he was targeting for his heist, to me felt like he was doing it as an excuse. I'm not sure if I bought things that he said, but I don't know if you're
that's
supposed
perfectly
to.
fair. And he is totally unreliable, so we probably shouldn't take James at his word.
Right.
I just offer it up as a question because he does talk about Dove early on, seemingly a fan, but maybe he's talking out of his arse. Who knows?
Well, I think he is a fan to a degree, but it's he's one of those exploitative fans that maybe uses someone else's celebrity and financial status for their own game, which is something that many people do. I mean, it's kind of like the classic stalker story in a way, right? When someone would try to target a person of celebrity status because they see it as an in for themselves, and perhaps that's how he sees something like this.
Yeah. And the one thing that we do know as well is that Fred is a Dove fan. That is cogent at the end of the film or toward the end of the film. And it's said that, like we find out that James was wanting to use him as a fence to sell those paintings. So to your point, while he may have been a Dove fan, even if superficially, it's certainly possible that his motives stemmed from, well, Fred loves these paintings and then I can use him to sell them. And that's how I'll get rid of them.
I think if anything, he was looking at the practicality of the art and not the art itself. And again, this is a Kelly Reichardt film, so things are not fully spelled out for us. Perhaps this is something she has very deliberately made open for interpretation. But I do think the characterization of James and Josh O'Connor's performance is definitely emphasizing that unreliability that you highlighted there.
Well, and speaking of, and again, going back to that idea of James just being completely detached from the realities around him economically, socially, politically, because when he organizes this heist, for one, he chooses the wrong person to steal the car. So that already goes awry. And then he asked another person to get involved here that was dubious. He knew that it was dubious, but hired the guy anyway. And it's that person that ends up being the one that derails the heist. Once they steal the paintings, he's caught by the FBI and immediately squeals on James. The FBI shows up at his house and things escalate from there. So he does not make the right choice. In fact, them stealing the paintings is almost an accident. Like them getting away with it initially.
Sloppiest heist I think I've seen in a movie.
Very sloppy. Very, very sloppy, which is made all the more hilarious by the fact that a cop shows up and James is in the car next to the cop and has to drive to a different location in order for them to get away.
And just the whole act of James trying to hide these paintings in that barn. It's like maybe
crazy.
The closest thing that Kelly Reichardt has got to slapstick.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, she doesn't do slapstick or comedy in general a whole lot, but I did find that quite effective. I thought that was very funny. And then later on, like all of this goes so awry, and it's seemingly obvious for those that live in this world, but it gets to a point where even the mafia gets involved, and they look at James and they laugh at James like, why on earth would you involve that guy? He's terrible. Of course he was going to ruin all of this for you. Like they scoff at him in like as if this was amateur hour, which it was. It was very much
It was.
amateur hour.
Yeah. They glare him down. The way they ask him questions, you can tell these mobsters are essentially saying, "Are you really that dumb?"
Yeah. And it's very funny.
Like in a way,
subtly very funny.
like you mentioned Inside Llewyn Davis earlier, and that particular scene when the mob gets involved, that's maybe the closest that a Kelly Reichardt film has come to reminding me of the Coen brothers. More specifically, something like Fargo, which is really interested in the buffoonery of these individuals, and like I was very much reminded of that there.
Yeah, there is a lot of Fargo here for sure.
Yeah.
When you're involving, thieving of things, and the mob somehow gets involved. It's absolutely farcical in that way. And then, of course, as we noted, he's on the run, and he's forced to make these brash decisions. And even in that, it's often very abrasive and sometimes quite cold. I talked about earlier the personal cost to all of this. And while the women rightfully get a lot of play here as far as the burden they have to carry. Again, I think about a couple of scenes here with Carl and Tommy, his sons. There's two in particular. There's one with Carl, I believe it is, the older son, who's in the car. And this is when he's about to be on the run for quite a while. He's not going to be around them, for a long time. And just completely oblivious to the weight of the moment. James is completely oblivious. But you can see it in Carl that he just wants time with his dad. Yeah. He just wants to spend time with him, wants to, play sports with him. And all James can think about is his own safety and how he's going to get out of this predicament. And then as he's on the run, he's talking to his sons on the phone, but things get urgent. So instead of spending that time while he cannot physically be around them, he's on the run, but instead of even spending time with them on the phone, he just drops the phone and leaves. Yeah. Just it completely heartless and cold. And all of that is born out of his utter detachment from what the reality is of 1970. And all he can think about is getting out of this middle-class life. And I don't even think he knows why. I truly, he's so brainless and purposeless here that I don't even think he would know. If you were to ask him, interview style, truly, I don't think he'd have an answer.
I will say the one thing in this movie that maybe comes closest to giving you an idea as to why James is trying to break away from what is seemingly a pretty comfortable life in this time. Maybe it does come down to how aggressive his father, played by Bill Camp, is as far as what it means to be a provider. And to be fair, his father is very aggressive with those ideals. And if someone like James doesn't have thick enough skin to say, I'm still providing for my family in my own way, you have no right to criticize me this way. But still, I can understand if maybe that was at least one of the biggest factors that maybe pushed him over the edge.
But probably not out of line for 1970.
Oh, certainly not. No.
So in line with the time. And again, I think that's why the context of 1970 is important. But
sure,
you are right that he clearly doesn't want to be his father.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want this middle-class life and he is very much in it for the money. He is open about that. Maybe there's a love of art, who knows, as we debated earlier, but the money aspect, there's no ambiguity to that.
Yeah.
And as simple, and again, maybe that's why I go back to the simplicity of this film. And again, just the irony that, he just seemingly doesn't understand any sort of nuance, which is why the ending to this film, I think, is brilliant, because it's
amazing. It's so funny, but also so sad.
So funny, maybe a little bit on the nose, but just that idea of being so oblivious to what's going on politically, why everyone is so charged up, and him just running into the middle of that utterly clueless, I just find astounding.
Well,
It's just so good.
it may seem like an oversimplified movie, but that's because its central character is a simple man.
Yeah.
He's very simple minded in that regard.
Yeah,
And I do think
it is purposefully that way.
Oh yeah. But I do think it's one of those movies where its simplicity allows you to mine other things from it. So perhaps you
agree.
can also look at this as a movie about the maybe the disregard some people have for art itself, and maybe see it as purely a monetary gain. And there's an exploitative nature with regard to how art is treated nowadays, especially film. And we're seeing a lot of that now in the news, given the whole Warner Brothers debacle, we'll simply say. Like the exploitation of art for financial gain is a huge talking point, and in a way, this movie is depicting that in a much smaller way. The scale of it is certainly smaller, but I think the subject matter is still there.
No, I completely agree. I mean, there's always a level of smallness to Reichardt's films that I do really love, and you're right that the simplicity of this film from a narrative perspective, but even from James's own perspective, I do think it allows for you to mine more out of what's bubbling underneath the surface. And I do think there is more going on there, but it's all done in this beautiful, methodical, subtle way that Kelly Reichardt is very much known for. And it won't be for everybody. But I never find that approach bland in her movies. And this is, is the Mastermind her most, I was going to use the word accessible, but I don't even know if that is applicable here. But
I don't think so. Maybe. It's certainly the breeziest one, like I mentioned earlier. I will say my wife Maris liked it. She watched it with me, and she actually enjoyed it. But I do think out of all of Kelly Reichardt's films, if you're looking for a quote-unquote movie, then I'd say First Cow is the one to start with. That's maybe the most movie out of hers as far as how much a movie can be when Kelly Reichardt makes one. But I do think this is certainly her breeziest thus far.
Yeah, First Cow, I haven't seen the film in a few years, but I remember that film being quite methodical and quiet, that I don't know how accessible it is. Maybe Wendy and Lucy to a degree, because everyone loves a good dog story.
Yeah. I think that's a possibility as well. That's certainly up there for sure. I only went to First Cow because I think the relationship at play between those two actors, Orion Lee and John Magaro, just has there's a warmth to it that I think
it's
a lot of people
true.
would probably latch on to anyway. And just the beauty of the movie itself, and the fact that it does have a bigness, even despite its smallness, I think might be more accessible than something like this. But I think the Mastermind certainly moves at the briskest, if that is that a word, the most brisk of paces when compared to her other movies.
No, you are right. There is a warmth to that movie that a lot of people will cherish and cling on to for sure. And the Mastermind, I say accessible just because of its breeziness, because of the heist of it all, and I do think it's methodical and precise in a Kelly Reichardt way, but this one moves a lot faster than most of her other movies. So it might be accessible in that way, but at the same time, for all the reasons we've already talked about, it's much colder by comparison.
It's more cynical. It really is.
Much more cynical. James is the worst. You have to be able, you have to want to hate watch him.
You love to hate this guy. You really
love
do.
to hate him. Absolutely. Which is why, again, if you're in the mood to be transported to the 1970s, then this is absolutely the movie for you. Which is, maybe it's hard to recommend, but if you love 70s Robert Altman, good Lord, that is this movie. If you told me,
really
if I didn't know, if I was just blindfolded and you said, "Oh, this is a long lost Robert Altman film from the 70s," I would believe you. It just has that spirit, and I deeply love that about Reichardt and what she channels here in terms of that tone and energy. And sometimes that's enough. Like it doesn't have to necessarily be the most thematically textured or emotionally riveting. This is certainly not that, but there's just something about the craft here, the camera work, again, that just laconic but redolent world building that we get here, that I just think is great. And honestly, that alone was enough for me, on top of what we see with James and him just constantly making the worst decisions. Until we get to the end, and it's just a brilliant ending.
This is the first Kelly Reichardt film, and I don't say this as a dig on her other movies, because her movies often leave you with such an emotional sting, if you will, that the movie just sits with you for quite a while. Like when I saw First Cow, that movie sat with me for like a year and a half, and then I was able to watch it again. The Mastermind was maybe the first time where I thought, as the end credits rolled, yeah, I want to watch it again, like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, I can enjoy watching that again.
Yeah.
Like, this is maybe her most rewatchable if you're in the mood for this kind of thing.
I agree. I think that's why I went toward accessible. Like it's a movie that is easier to consume by comparison for her.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there are other things going on here, as we've been talking about. And I do love that, like how she writes James, in the sense that if you told him who the president was, he wouldn't be able to tell you.
I love that.
Wouldn't be able to tell you.
Such a dimwit.
Such a dimwit. The fact that he finds himself in the presence of the mob and doesn't really have any sort of clue how he got there. I mean, like, that is enough to tell you about how clueless he is. Or again, going back to who he hires for the heist. Like, it's obvious to any of us that he's going about this in the most dim-witted way, but he just doesn't think about it in those terms. In fact, he wasn't even planning on being there. Like, the only reason he's at the heist to begin with is because he screwed up with the car.
I know. This is also why I think Josh O'Connor's performance is quite good. He is having a hell of a year.
Yes.
We talked a lot about James as a character, but we haven't really singled out Josh O'Connor's performance.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go next.
Yeah, but he is terrific here, and I think as far as playing dimwits is concerned, he's really good at that. Probably the last time I think I've seen an actor do the dimwit thing this well was maybe Leonardo DiCaprio in Killers of the Flower Moon or something like that. But I think they're giving off kind of similar dim-witted energies. I've never thought I'd say those words together in a sentence, but I think they're both very effective in their own ways, and Josh O'Connor certainly up for the challenge.
Man, he is having one hell of a year. I have not seen Rebuilding yet. It is in my inbox. I do hope to get to it before we get to our year-end awards.
Yeah.
But loved him in The History of Sound. He's arguably the best thing about Wake Up Dead Man. That might be my favorite performance he's given this year, but The Mastermind is very much in that conversation. He is, I don't even know if I have the words to articulate how good he is here. Like, you have to have a certain quality that allures us to you, because again, James is the worst. So he has to be able to tap into those qualities, those characteristics in James, that he's dim-witted, that he might have some intelligence hidden behind the street level ignorance that he conveys throughout most of the film, because again, he is comfortable. He's living a life where he has the luxury to become an art thief, and he really didn't have to. Really didn't have to at all. He burdens his mom to pay for it, but he didn't have to go down that road, but he chooses to. And it certainly, you get the sense that he's probably a smart guy, but when it comes to this type of lifestyle, to this life of crime, he has no clue what he's doing. And part of it is certainly born out of his ignorance of the world around him. And Josh O'Connor taps into all of that with this effortless credence that's just unbelievable. But at the same time, you can't take your eyes off of him. Like, he's so charming and lovable. I don't know. There's something about watching that character just completely unravel at every single turn that I was eating my popcorn and completely tuned in for.
That's why I think I'm almost hard pressed to say this might be my favorite performance of his so far
Yeah.
this year. Primarily because I think it is the most challenging one to try to straddle that line between charm and absolute hatred, which I think is a more difficult thing to do. If anything, maybe my favorite character he played this year is Father Judd from Wake Up Dead Man. But a lot of that is also to do with the arc of that character and Ryan Johnson's writing. So there's more going on congruently there, where I think so much of the work with his performance here in the Mastermind, there's a level of complexity with how to pull something like this off that I just think is a little bit trickier. So like that's why I might be hard pressed to say this one, but maybe it's just because we're talking about it now, so it's very much fresh in my mind. I don't know, but that's where I'm going right now.
Yeah, that's my 1A and 1B for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And you are right. I think there's an argument to be made that this is trickier because Kelly Reichardt, God love her, she isn't the writer that Ryan Johnson is. And there isn't much to James on the page, as we've been talking about. The simplicity is a strength for this film.
It's an asset, yeah.
And it gives Josh O'Connor a bunch of space to, again, play with that character and make us loathe him but love him simultaneously. Like we love to see him kind of unravel, and it is really great. I just, at the same time, the only reason I hesitate is because I also think giving credence to religiosity, especially the ways that we see in Wake Up Dead Man, is so very hard. I feel like
in this climate, that's a good point.
I just, that, like, because a lot of it just comes off tacky. Sometimes, you know, like a lot of Hollywood, it is purposefully coming off tacky.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes you get a Silence, you get a First Reformed, you know, you get some great spiritual movies from time to time, but a lot of the time, I feel like Hollywood and Christianity,
you get movies like Heaven is for Real. Remember that thing?
It's not good. Like, it's just like I rarely do I see Hollywood films, especially, but even outside of the Hollywood system, American movies at large, whenever it tackles Christianity, it's never fully authentic. And somehow in a Hollywood Ryan Johnson movie like that, I don't know, Silence might be or First Reformed, like those two for sure are the prime examples of getting that specific faith, like getting that right on film.
I agree.
Like truly authentic. I don't know if I expected that in a Knives Out movie, but here we are. And a lot of that also comes down to his performance. Like he has to give credence to that. And I fully believed, like if you told me he went to church for months to prep for that role and really lived that life, I would have believed you.
Same.
From that perspective, I find it incredibly impressive. But you are right, like how you articulated the challenges of the Mastermind, I wholly agree with. But it just speaks to how great he is of an actor. Again,
he's good at his job. Yeah.
I know he said he wanted to take a break, and I say no. Like selfishly, I want you to keep working.
We just need stuff to talk about on this podcast. We're that privileged. We need to talk about him.
Like he's quickly becoming one of my favorites, and he had I love him in this.
Yeah,
film.
he's one of the most interesting for sure. What did you think of Alana Haim in this? And so let me ask this a different way, because the way I ask this as a secondary question might change your answer. Do you feel any differently about her performance here, knowing that it was originally meant to be played by Kristen Stewart?
Maybe. So 2025 is interesting because you could make an argument. Look, this is gonna sound like it's me being cynical, and I promise I don't mean it to be. But 2025 is the year of movies wasting a lot of time. Like, and maybe this is just because of how much I love her in Licorice Pizza, that for her to essentially have glorified cameos in this in one battle after another was a little. I don't know if I want to say deflating, but like I just selfishly wanted more.
That's fair.
And she has a quick exit in one battle after another. She has essentially two small scenes here in the Mastermind, and like she's I guess in a few scenes early on, but she's just there, just lingering in the background. And these are, at least given what I'm looking at here, these are the only two films that we've seen her in post Licorice Pizza. Am I correct about that? Because
I
she's
think
been
so.
doing the music thing, right?
Yeah, she's obviously touring with Haim, doing a few music videos with them.
Yeah.
So I think these are her only 3 primary acting performances in feature films.
Yeah. And look, again, I think given what her characters are in those two movies, she's perfectly fine. Is she underserved based off of what I saw in Licorice Pizza? Absolutely. I'd say that's the case. But I can't fathom Kristen Stewart in this role. There's no way.
It was originally supposed to be her, apparently, and I think scheduling conflicts prevented that from happening.
I just can't fathom. And maybe there's something to the film that when it's not Kristen Stewart, the character is edited out of this film more. That could certainly be the case, because her character here doesn't really have much of she doesn't have all that much weight. And the best moment we have with her is we don't even see her. It's on the phone. Those conversations that she has with James when he's on the run and she clearly is fed up with his nonsense and is done with him. Like, I would have, again, selfishly would have loved to see her on camera, but we don't. We only hear her voice there, and it is effective. She is very much conveys the bitterness of the character. So it is good, but I mean, this is the Josh O'Connor movie through and through.
If I have one slight criticism of this movie, I do wonder if it would have worked better had his wife just simply been played by an actress that was maybe less recognizable as an Alana Haim nowadays, or even a Kristen Stewart, it was originally meant to be. Especially given the recency bias of Alana Haim in a movie like One Battle After Another, and of course with Licorice Pizza, and she's a very prominent face in the music scene as well. Yeah. Does it then become too distracting to have a familiar face like that? At least familiar to us.
Perhaps. Because again, I felt that way about One Battle After Another. Like, I think you can argue that's the best film of the year. And I might make that argument. Either way, it's top tier for me. And I still hold that criticism. Like, I find it distracting that Alana Haim is in that film for 2 scenes and then is killed off and we never see her again. It's like, what are we doing here? Why is 2025 doing this to me twice? So I don't know.
That's fair.
But that could just be me. That could just be my love of her. I think in
both
cases, in both cases, I think she serves those characters for what's there on the page. I mean, just might be a casting thing. I don't know.
I think, and I think it's also just us and our relationship to these movies. This might not be an overarching or even global concern for everyone going to see this movie. It's just people like us that are very much closely tied to the scene.
Which is why I put it on me and not really on the film. And the same thing for One Battle. She doesn't do anything to harm those movies.
No, she's fine in those movies.
She's very fine. Like, she's serviceable. Like, it very much is a subjective us thing because we love her and we just want to see more of her. And when she's underutilized, then we're salivating for more. But that's not what is called for with the character on the page. So I get it. I understand. Like, it's more of a fault of me and not really the movie.
Yeah, and that's why I bring it up as more of a question than anything else, because we realize it's more on us.
Yeah. But I at least loved getting to see her again this year, even if they were fleeting moments in this film and in One Battle, but it was just good to see her on camera again, I guess. And I didn't even know she was in One Battle. So when I saw her there, it was like, oh my God, what a fun surprise. And then shot in the head and dead. And it's like, oh no. Oh no.
Thankfully, that's a very early spoiler. I think everyone listening to this podcast
Oh yeah,
has
so
seen
I didn't
one
even
battle
think
after
about
another
that
already.
Everyone's seen one battle after another already. It's early on. It's in the first 10 minutes, so it's fine.
It got some Globe nominations. I think people have seen it. It's nominated for
Yes.
Best Comedy, which I have thoughts on.
Yeah. And look, spoiler alert, she's not shot in the head in the Mastermind, okay? We can all put that to rest. She doesn't die.
Maybe emotionally, but no, she does not die.
Yeah, she's emotionally shot by her husband, yes. Bill Camp is always fun to see. Always love me a Bill Camp. As,
Great character actor.
Small role, but yeah, great character actor. And John Magaro, just he's that he's quickly replacing Michelle Williams with Kelly Reichardt. John Magaro just showing up in everything that she's doing now.
Sometimes you need multiple muses. You cover different gamuts, and John Magaro is good in this. Like he's not asked to do much, but I feel like his performance at least is trying to add something that, let's say, the writing of Alana Haim's character is not necessarily doing. So he's certainly up to the challenge.
I mean, I do hope going forward that Reichardt finds a way with both Michelle Williams and John Magaro to just Ryan Johnson, Joseph Gordon-Levitt their way into every movie.
Make a romance film with the two of them.
Yeah. You can do that too.
Either way. I mean, yeah. There we go. I'd see that.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's, again, glorified cam, just keep the ball rolling. Just keep going. Every movie, no matter what.
This, how about this? If Kelly Reichardt's going to keep making homages like this to Robert Altman, then bring in John Magaro, bring in Michelle Williams, and do her version of Popeye.
There you go. You could do that next. I know. I can't imagine her doing any sort of IP, even if it's Altman level.
Imagine Michelle Williams doing Olive Oil.
I know. If she did do any IP, it would be an Altman like Popeyes. Like there's no doubt about it. Like that's what she would do.
Honestly, if anything, it would, to be realistic, if she were to do anything IP related, she might be in the next Knives Out movie or something like that. I could see that happening.
Could be. Who knows? But I love Kelly Reichardt. I hope she keeps making movies, and I'm deeply excited for whatever she has next. I do really love this a lot. I think this is easily one of her most rewatchable movies, I think.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a fan of 70s New Hollywood Altman era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Probably sitting very much close to my top 10 of the year right now. I think this is going to settle somewhere in my top 20 when we get to the end of the year.
Yeah, I haven't quite done that exercise yet, but yeah, just off the cuff here. Yeah, this is probably hovering around that 11, 12 range at the moment. But who knows?
It's good stuff.
I'm still kind of wrestling, but either way, really good. I really like it a lot.
I have to quickly comment on the musical score here.
Yeah, someone to mention that as well. Yes.
Yeah. Apparently, it's his first ever credited score.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's so rare, and this is maybe the music side of me just getting a bit nerdy once again. But there are so many times I hear original scores that claim to be quote unquote jazz, but they're really not.
Yeah.
This one is this one is very much going for that 1970s, like late hard bop, eventually like making its way to like avant-garde fusion in a way. It's got that kind of mix of things going on there. Very much reminded me of like late 60s Miles Davis, the Miles Davis Quintet specifically. But this is one of the first times where I heard what was essentially a jazzy movie score. And my first thought was that actually does sound like jazz. And I love that. I love that.
Do you know anything about Rob Mazurek as a jazz musician?
Not offhand, actually. I was trying to do that as we were talking because I knew I wanted to emphasize how great of a composer he was here. Apparently, he's a trumpet player, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know anything about him either. I didn't realize this was his. I didn't know the name, so I'm not too surprised, I guess, to hear that this is his first film composition. But that's why I wanted to ask. to see if you were more familiar with
So
him than I was.
So let's go by let's first let me first make sure that I have the right guy pulled up here. Because if I go to Rob Mazurik's Wikipedia page, we know how accurate Wikipedia is. But honestly, when it comes to musicians, Wikipedia is actually very good because it's actually very good at pulling from other sources to compile something that is a concoction of what these are. And apparently, Rob Mazurik is someone that did study the foundations of improvised jazz music and jazz theory with David Bloom at the Bloom School of Jazz in Chicago. So there you go.
Yep. Now I did see that here, and I wasn't. Yeah, I'm not familiar with him at all, but very exciting. Very, very exciting. It is very good. I loved it quite a bit. So I guess that's just the fun little quirks you get with Kelly Reichardt, bringing in new people and new artists and expanding her,
bringing in real
artistry.
musicians.
Yeah, deeply love it. Do you have any other final thoughts outside of the score?
I mean, you already did comment on the cinematography, but let's at least give credit where credit is due. Christopher Blauvelt is the cinematographer here, whose work also includes First Cow and Emma. So this is someone that certainly has a track record. Yeah, good stuff. And this is great stuff as well. Oh, apparently the director of photography on May December as well.
Oh, look at that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, this is a great film aesthetically. Again, like it feels like a time travel movie. Like it was made in 1970 and somehow showed up in 2025 is what it feels like to me.
Yeah,
and it's
I
very
like.
immersive in that. Yeah, it's very.
It doesn't
immersive.
call attention to itself too heavily that it's trying to go for an older aesthetic. Because so often we see filmmakers or cinematographers try to capture an older aesthetic, and it looks more like a new movie trying to look like an old movie as opposed to an old movie, right?
Yeah.
This kind of feels more like the latter.
Yeah, and it's more than just the production value or the costuming. Like, I love that hazy brown hue that just hovers over this film, like it's straight out of that era. And it's
color grading.
Really
it's
great.
important.
Yeah, it turns out.
Yeah,
turns out Hollywood. Good Lord,
you hear that, Marvel?
Yeah, color grading makes a big difference. It turns out. So
yeah.
I really like that. And you couple that with Josh O'Connor, who just phenomenal year. Just absolutely incredible in this film.
Absolutely.
Deeply love it. If you agree or disagree with anything we had to say, you can leave a comment below. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can hit us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can email us in sessionfilm@gmail.com. Okay, this week is very busy. New Chasing the Gold should be out already. We have another review where we brought on Isaiah Washington to talk about Jay Kelly. That was a really great time. You can go and check that out. And then the main show this week, Ryan McQuaid joining us to talk awards and the Globes and all that fun thing, all those fun things. So be on the lookout for that. And a new Women in Session at the end of the week as well. We're getting closer and closer to the end. I do want to remind everybody that the In Session Film Awards is coming up about in a month's time. We usually do it about that second weekend of January, so we're about a month out from doing that, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for that. We'll have some more information coming.
There are some movies to talk about.
Yes, we have a few big hitters to get to. I have seen most of them. I have some huge foreign language films I gotta see still.
Yeah, that's probably where my biggest gap is. You're more along than I am. There are a few big ones I still have to catch up with, but in a month's time I can get through them. That's gonna make the award show feel very much like a plethora of movie knowledge coming at you.
Yeah. We have a bunch to catch up on. Obviously, we have some big reviews coming down the pipeline soon with Marty Supreme and Avatar, No Other Choice, which I've seen all those movies. So I'm just, as soon as Brendan can get to them, we're going to talk about them. Don't worry. We'll get to them ASAP.
Nah, we're not. We're going to skip them.
Should be a lot of fun. All right. With that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast.